Hey, what's up, everybody? Gonna do a little bit of a different kind of reaction here, man. This is what I'm calling an up close and personal. I've already done rock profiles of Jimmy Page. This is going to be a little bit more up close and personal, I believe, mainly because it's a series of interviews. So, first off, there are three people that I have to thank in this particular reaction lineup. SPP, aka Susan Palmer, Evelyn, and Brian Simpson. Thanks to all three of you. What they've done, all three of them have submitted different reaction recommendations, and they're little bits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them all together in one reaction. So Susan Palmer, she says, "Hey Wayne, this is from me and Helene Spalding, aka Evelyn. We're teaming up on you. Smiles, wink, winks. Jimmy Page interview from 1976 in the middle of the Led Zeppelin reign. Around the time the song Remains the Same comes out. Speaking to Alan Freeman, Brit radio DJ host. It's about 30-ish minutes. Hope you'll give it a listen. Thanks." 30-ish, it's over 40 minutes, Susan. I'm starting to pay attention now to the length of some of these recommendations. I remember one time I did a reaction for Harry, and in my mind I thought it was 5 to 10 minutes, The Curse of Led Zeppelin. That shit ended up being over 40 minutes long, man. Yo. So I gotta start paying attention to the length of these submissions. I usually just put it in the folder and then come back to it a couple of weeks later when it's time to react, and then sometimes I get a surprise. So yeah, when I'm taking in the recommendations, I gotta start looking at things closer. Anyway, just a personal Wayne thing. So Evelyn says, "Wayne, I just watched this 13-minute clip of Jimmy Page and his creative process. It's a great summation of all the different things you have spoken about regarding Zeppelin and why they were so successful. It brings all the different facets together and presents it very clearly and is very informative. Just thought you might like it for your archives. It draws heavily on the 2017 Oxford Union talk you reacted to earlier, but puts it in context." And another big smile wink face. You guys are really collaborating. Oh, and don't be put off by the title. That's just clickbait. You see what I'm talking about? I didn't look, so now I gotta look real quick. Stairway to Heaven backwards. Myth versus reality. Okay, that's what she means. Yeah, I was just talking about The Curse of Led Zeppelin. Yeah, sometimes I just don't, I don't do any kind of background or anything like that. I just jump right into the reaction, and then I kind of, it's like jumping into the deep end of the pool. Sometimes I pay for it. And so then, Brian Simpson says, "Hey STB, hope all is well with you. I saw this video of Plant and Page live in concert on August 23rd of '98. I'm not sure who is playing with them, but they all sound really good. Robert and Jimmy seem emotionally inspired. How Many More Times is one of my favorite songs, especially the live Denmark video. If you decide to check it out, I hope you enjoy. Peace." Now correct me if I'm wrong, because I think more than likely I am. 98. So Page and Plant had got together maybe was this a year or so ago? Or didn't they get together in 95? I'm trying to go back in time thinking about the Coverdale Page album. And I think that with Coverdale and Page teaming up, it lit a fire under Robert's ass, right? And so then immediately after, or shortly after, he got together with Jimmy and they were kind of jamming. So when Brian says that they're emotionally inspired, I think it's just the freshness of their collaboration. But I'm trying to pinpoint the timing here. I think my timing might be off. But I'm guessing that that's why they might have been emotionally inspired. That's what I'm trying to address. I'm usually wrong, man. All right, so let's do this. Oh, first off, before we do this, man, I want to give you guys a structure of how we're going to do this. First, we're going to do the 40-minute Susan interview, and then take a quick break, and then we're going to hit up Evelyn's 13-minute clip of Jimmy Page, and then after that we're going to hit up Brian's video of Page and Robert. And what are they singing? Sorry. Yeah, let me just take a quick look, see what they're singing here. How many more times? How many more times live? And it's 9 minutes, man. All right, so needless to say this, let me address the trolls. Let me feed some crumbs to our trolls from the Classic Rock platform. To you trolls who insist on coming back all the time, for what reason I don't know. Let me throw you some crumbs. This is a reaction channel focusing specifically on the formation of rock and roll, the structure, the skeleton, the bones, all of the crumbs in behind that damn toaster. This is not for your enjoyment. I am not an entertainer. If you have come here to be entertained, you are in the wrong place and you are looking at the wrong person. So what you've got to do is you've got to go to another reaction channel. I use the term reactions loosely only because I'm actually taking it in real time, but I actually give you my recommendation after the fact. So I'm a very, very solid, stoic kind of person. That's just the way I roll. Great platform for a reviewer, that sort of thing, but I put reaction in there only because I am doing it in real time, and then I give you my review thereafter. So if you're here to be entertained, wrong brother, wrong channel. Go somewhere else, because I know what you're going to do. You're going to make these stupid ass comments later. Yawn, this was boring, this was dry, this was so and so and so. Bounce, you understand? Because depending on the mood I'm in, I might just be tempted to block your dumb ass. So this channel is for serious Led Zeppelin fans. This reaction especially, it's long, and it's for the real Led Zeppelin fan. 25 minutes, 30 minutes, you're going to fall off and you're not going to be here. Almost 2 hours later, the real Led Zeppelin fans will still be here. Hashtag, I am the real shit. Let me know who you are. Not the casual sail-by-night Led Zeppelin fan that just wants to be entertained. There's a difference between two. It's like a damn cook and a chef. There's a difference. The real Led Zeppelin fans will still be here after 2 hours. So I'm giving you the heads up, trolls. Leave, right? That's all I gotta say. I don't have time for you. All right. It seems like with every great rock and roll fan that comes along on my channel, accompanied right behind them are a whole bunch of trolls. And I've got to kind of address them and put them in check, right? And let them know how I roll, because a lot of trolls on YouTube don't know that a lot of their creators or some of their creators actually police their channel. I police my channel. And if you're gonna come up into my channel, say some stupid shit, you got nothing to contribute, you are out. Bounce, right? Sorry for the long ass intro, folks, but I've been being inundated by a lot of trolls lately, so I've got to put them in check. All right. With all of that said, to my fellow real Led Zeppelin fans, let's hit this shit up. Jimmy Page radio interview 1976, entitled The Best Documentary Ever. All right, let's get it.
Jimmy, this is your 7th album, is that right?
Sure.
And a live album. How do you feel primarily about...
Wait a minute, 8th.
It's your 8th album. Yes, you're taking it. This is your 8th album.
Yeah.
This is your first live album.
Sure.
Oh, the
yeah.
sound room is the same.
Was there any kind of particular courage needed by yourself, or Robert, or Bonzo, or John, in putting out a live album as against...
Well, look, let's say this. It is a live album primarily, but it is a soundtrack as well, because we've got live recordings of concerts going back to '69. Albert Hall and Madison Square Garden again.
It's amazing that this
Los
gentle
Angeles.
little voice...
And yet we hadn't put them out before. In fact, there was a plan at one point to put out a chronological live LP, which would have been fun, you know?
Yeah. As apart from being a rock musician, how do you feel about almost primarily being a film star, literally overnight?
I hadn't even thought of it in that way at all, just to sort of an appearance every now and again, really, because to me the whole thing's basically a musical, you know. And there are different sequences, you know, that make up montage or whatever, but it's not acting as such, is it really? It's just appearing and showing your face, you know.
Tremendous things have happened to you since 1968, really, hasn't they?
Oh, too true, yeah.
Are there any particular moments between 1968 and 76 that you qualify as being the highs of your total career at this particular stage?
Good question.
Well, there seems to have been a build all the way through, really, which has sort of overwhelmed one. But I do remember one particular point that sort of knocked me flat on the backside, so to speak. We went to the States after having not put out an album for 15 months or something, and not having been there for a year. And the very first two concerts, the first one being Atlanta, had like 53,000 people there. And the next one, Tampa, Florida, 57. And suddenly I thought, my goodness, what's going on? You know, it's crazy. You know, it's the way that people were really just, you know, flocking to us with this great loyalty. And the sort of promoters that were saying, oh, they'll never do it. You know, nobody's going to turn up because they haven't put out any product. And it suddenly occurred to me that, you know, we had a different sort of following to most people. And, you know, it's that sort of thing is obviously very warming to the heart and the soul, you know.
Were you very happy initially of having a very different following from the usual following that follows rock musicians?
I think really it's, as far as groups and audiences go, groups, especially on live shows, you know, they're as good as the audience, really. The audience, I've seen some shows where the audience has been better than the group that I've gone to see sometimes. Let's put it this way. Pacing the history of the group, so to speak, an album will come out, say the third LP, and there was a lot of more acoustic numbers. There's more of a total mellow mood than say on the second LP, which was like a rock and roll one, really. And the critics gave it a bad time because they expected us to be in sort of groove that they could relate to, you see, and it was too much of a shock. But we've gone through changes within our own lives, and it reflected in the music as it has up to now, sort of thing, you know. And it's very encouraging to find that the audience as such can relate to those changes and still be with you. You know, that's really great. You know? Yeah, sure.
Do you ever worry about an image that you have of being extremely heavy?
What, the sort of heavy metal thing? I think we managed to erase that sort of tag and cliche that got put on us. Around about the fourth LP, to anybody that was still doubtful about us and wondering really where we were at and everything, when Stairway to Heaven came out, they realised that we were a group that was intent on change, and there was far more of a dramatic quality within our particular brand of music than, say, the, so to speak, heavy metal groups. You know, there was more going on within it, within the framework.
At the advent of Led Zeppelin, did you feel that in fact when you developed some kind of musical policy, that it was very important that your audiences came along to identify with the particular thing that they thought Led Zeppelin was? Was that a worry at all?
Well, no. In putting the group together in the early days, you know, I had an idea of what I thought was right within those days. And it didn't really matter whether it was going to sort of happen or not within one's mind, because it was so enjoyable to be playing. And one could feel the chemistry was there even from the very first day of a rehearsal, that there was something there that was definitely going to be really good and really enjoyable to be part of. We never really bothered to purposely engineer situations which we knew would be acceptable to audiences. In fact, it's been quite the reverse, because, you know, we've come under the hammer a number of times just by sticking to one's guns, and I mean, if one has sort of composed a certain amount of songs at one time and they've gone on an LP, because basically an LP is only where you've been, you know, collectively at that time. Obviously, one knows there's a change of direction or something. Maybe a group could say, well, wait a minute, wouldn't it be better to sort of stick to the usual policy to keep it, keep the identity and everything there. But we've never done this. We've obviously we're very highly critical of what we do, but it's as I say, the band is a band highly intent on change and sort of ever onward, pressing as far through the boundaries as one can possibly go.
Yeah, sure. Jimmy, do you think there was any kind of reason why audiences developed almost overnight for Led Zeppelin, particularly in America? I mean, America happened first, didn't it, really?
Well, I think the fact was we were really a very earthy group, and as I say, there was this exploratory thing going on within the music, and at that time there was a lot of apathy setting in. And there was
what kind of apathy, actually?
Well, it was just at the end of the San Francisco phase, well at the end of that.
Yeah.
And I remember that's in fact where we really took off in San Francisco. And Country Joe was on the bill, and one of the other San Francisco groups. But there'd been like a very sort of, almost like a brotherhood of groups over there. Yeah. And they just knew these people inside out. And suddenly somebody was there really laying it down, and of course they just reacted to it. And the news of that particular night just spread like wildfire over the States, and suddenly we'd made our mark.
Did you have any particular plan of attack, of musical attack, or musical structure?
No.
On your very first night in America before an American audience?
Well, no, only the amount of stuff that we'd written. I mean, to be quite honest, I'd been in the Yardbirds before, and obviously I had a lot of ideas that I'd built within the Yardbirds that hadn't gone down on record or anything. And I sort of, worked on those a little bit as a framework, because obviously when you start a group, you've got to have a certain amount of framework, and if you're going to do other people's numbers,
That's right, yeah.
And there was obviously overtones of that, and of course that erased itself as we, continued.
As a member of the Yardbirds, were there burning musical policies within you itching to get out that you couldn't fulfill with the Yardbirds?
Only at the end, because they'd, Keith Ralph bless his soul now, but it got so just generally brought down with things. I don't know what it was really underlying everything, but I remember him saying one day that the magic of that group left him when, it disappeared when Eric Clapton left the group.
Yeah.
And that had been many, many years before I joined, Obviously that was the way he saw it, the band, and it was just very, very difficult. It was an uphill struggle to keep them at it, and they just didn't want to know anymore. So eventually that band split.
Yeah, sure. But how did you actually physically go about the formation of Led Zeppelin, the finding of them?
Well, I wanted to carry on for sure, because I had a certain amount of faith in, certain reactions that one had experienced in the States, with the Yardbirds and other places, Australia too, and England too. And Terry Reid was a singer that I remember having worked with on a bill, the same bill rather, I should say.
And an enormous singer too.
With it was a Rolling Stones tour. When you think about the bill now, it's amazing. There was I Can Tina Turner Review, Terry Reid with band then called Peter J, Yardbirds and Rolling Stones. I mean, you just don't get bills like that.
No, right.
But anyhow, I tried to track him down, and lo and behold, he just signed with Mickey Mouse. But he suggested Robert, so I tracked up to Birmingham and saw him, and I was amazed, and suddenly it all started to come together in a very short time. It wasn't like a year's process of getting it all together, which seems to be the usual thing. I mean, the whole thing came together within a matter of weeks.
When you first saw Robert, can you remember your immediate reaction?
Yes, I do. It was very strange, actually. I thought there must be something wrong with this chap, because if he hasn't got on, because the quality of his voice was really striking. I thought it must just be a personality thing. You know what I mean? I mean, he'd made records and this, that, and the other in Birmingham, and I just couldn't understand what it was that had held him back.
When you actually first approached Robert Plant and spoke to him, can you remember what you said to him?
Well, I made reference to Terry Reid, and I said, I think we should, get together if you're interested. Come down and, spend some time at my place. We'll go through some sounds and records, see if we've got the same idea, if we're sympathetic. and take it on from there.
He was very
So
aware of you, of
casual,
course,
it
wasn't
could
he?
have been just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
I mean, he knew what we were,
Too
that
far to
there was this
travel.
thing of forming a group, and then, well, we seemed to get on pretty well, and he was very blues orientated, and of course I've been through that as well. And then I played in a lot of other things which I planned to sort of attempt, like Babe, I'm Going to Leave You and things like that, which, had a totally different approach to the way that it had originally been done by Joan Baez. And he seemed to be into all of these things, so it was definitely on,
It was a real gelling of...
Yes, it was, for sure.
Apart from his ability as a singer, and obviously as a musician, did your personalities gel? I mean, did you like each other? Or?
It was that. The only thing was, I remember he was doing a lot of West Coast music, which I had an aversion to.
Why was
a lot of Buffalo Springfield.
What did you like about it?
Well, I just, you see, there was an image over here of the West Coast scene, and actually a lot of the bands were very, very poor. The quality was terrible, and I could understand how he'd become involved in the whole, this great sort of family image of groups all together and everything, but it's I wasn't about to tell him that in fact the music was awesome when you actually heard it live.
Well, when you had this feeling yourself about the quality of West Coast music.
Now what you're saying, what you're saying is broadcasting an opinion. Well, I wouldn't normally do that. I'm only doing that almost, within conversation here. I mean, for instance, I'll give you two examples. Buffalo Springfield, I saw them and they had the sort of balance. Obviously the musical content was totally different, but say the Hollies, if one ever saw those in the old days, perfect balance, perfect harmonies, everything was completely routine right down to the line, and that's how they were. Now I went to see Jefferson Airplane, and they began their set with a bass solo, which was absolutely phenomenal. And these were in the days of the whole, apex of the San Francisco scene, and I thought, well, my God, this is going to be just the end of the world, when they start. And then they began playing, and I couldn't believe it. They couldn't keep time, and it was awful. It was just a great shock, But it was only a personal opinion. You see, as far as the social importance of it, the social attitude, it was very important. And so, I'm only speaking on a musical point.
Yes, sure. And from Robert, you gathered for Led Zeppelin, for the completion of Led Zeppelin.
Well, John Paul Jones is somebody that I've worked with many times before, in studio dates. And John Bonham, Robert had played with, and fought with, but in the past. And he was playing with Tim Rose at the time, so we went to see him. And he was... well, there were two people, actually. It was B.J. Thomas of the Procol Harum. And Bonzo. Those were the two possible drummers, you see. But when I saw Bonzo, I knew that he was definitely on,
When you think back to your very beginning of a thinking human being, which is sometimes very hard, and sometimes very clear and very easy to assimilate almost immediately. I mean, I remember you being musically sparked up by Chuck Berry, etc. Is there something even before then?
Yeah. Baby Let's Play House by Presley.
Yeah.
That was the best.
Even before Elvis Presley. Can you remember the musical thing?
Oh, what, the first sounds that I ever heard?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Stan Kenton, I should think.
Yeah.
Those sort of things. But the first rock and roll thing that really turned me on, when I went, wait a minute, what was that? And it was Baby Let's Play House.
It was the very first time you did it?
Yeah, and that's when I wanted to play after hearing that. I thought, I want to be part of this.
What did it do to you? And
it just sent shivers up my spine.
And how did you devise in your own mind, how were you going to become a part of this?
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know at all, but I was just determined to sort of be part of it, you know? Because in those days, there just wasn't anybody playing.
That's right.
You may find one other guitarist, but he'd live about 30 miles away somewhere,
Had you at that particular...
There was no textbook, let's put it that way.
There was what?
No textbook, which there is now.
Had you at that stage picked up any kind of instrument? I mean...
No, not really, no.
And you had
not at all, I don't say not at all, no. And I think somebody had given a guitar to the family just soon after hearing that record, and then it just sort of happened that obvious sort of process of one day finding somebody who knew how to tune it, and then one was away, you know. And then went through the rock and roll phase, you know, Rick Nelson's guitarist, James Burton being a great influence, Chuck Berry, then B.B. King. All these things started to unfold, all the different styles of guitar, the electric styles anyway, and then becoming involved in, you know, classical music and you know, really seeing the guitar as such an important instrument, and there's so many different approaches and styles that could be, you know, employed upon it.
Did you buy a book with chords on it, or did you finger it round and work things out for yourself?
I don't know. I think I probably just used to take all my frustrations out on it, like some people smash plates against walls, you know.
Yeah.
He really sat down.
Mainly it was just trading things with other people, you know, and then once one got an ear, you could hear it from records. You heard a record, and you think, well, I'll try and play that solo, and that's really how it started. I think all the other guitarists the same way too. And you started to try and emulate what you heard, and before long you could play those solos note perfect. So then you started to follow these good guitarists, so to speak, that could play in your own mind well.
Yeah.
And each time the next record came out, well, you'd buy it, and you know, a day later you'd have the solo off. So bit by bit, that's the way one taught themselves, you know.
Can you remember some of the frustrations that made you want to play a guitar?
All I remember about it was taking it to school and having it taken away every time it was seen. Yeah. Trying to hide in the corner of the field to practice. I used to try and play the thing all the time, you know, to improve. And it was sort of confiscated and given back at the end of the day.
Do you think it detracted from, let us say, your possible academic skill?
No, not really. Certainly not to the degree that obviously that the staff would have thought. You know, I think but nevertheless, I would have thought one of the most important things about this music is the fact that it wasn't taught, that it is self-taught, almost like a craft, you know, and that it has evolved through the young folk, through the street. It's been a social statement, you know, and so it should really go hand in hand with any academic subject.
When you started playing a guitar, when you first heard Presley, was it the start of a personal rebellion against society, against rules laid down as to what? No.
It didn't really occur to me at that point that that's what that's what was going on within the lyrics and everything. That became evident to me through Chuck Berry and what he was singing about, and suddenly the coin dropped, and I thought, wait a minute, you know, this is what he's saying, and no money down and things like that. You
That's
know.
right.
Incredible stuff.
When you heard No Money Down, when you first heard your first rebellious lyric, as against all you'd been taught to accept.
Well, baby, let's play house. Come and move in with me. I mean, that was 1956 or 7 or something. It just you just didn't do those sort of things.
That's right.
Live in sin. You were, you know, almost excommunicated, weren't you, from society?
Right. And you thought what?
Well, I more so than actually the lyrical content, which hit me later. You know, as I say, it was just the musical thing, the fact that it was so vibrant, and that you could feel that they were really, I can't just say enjoying what they were doing. It was just a total commitment and involvement. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, at the end of Mystery Train of Presley's, you can hear him laughing. I don't know whether you've ever... Just on the fader. And it's just things like that where it's like they know that they're doing something which is revolutionary almost, you know, within musical fields, and they're just so into it and committed to it. And that sort of dedication and conviction, I could sympathise with, you know. Especially when I viewed what was going on around me in other sort of music, you know, the Guy Mitchell days and things like that. It just had nothing going for it at all.
Because it is quite amazing, you know, when I interviewed Robert at one particular stage of my career, I asked Robert about music and the initial spark that made him go, well, hey, what? He talked about Rosemary Clooney and Where Will the Baby's Dimple Be, which I think that if you actually played to a public in 1976, and people associated with it being the initial spark for Robert Plant, they would be absolutely, totally blown and couldn't believe it.
I'm blown away too, to be honest. Yeah, that's incredible.
It really is very odd indeed. Do you ever look back upon old records that in fact you liked, say in your very early childhood? I mean, do you listen to them now and say to yourself, my God, what was that all about?
No, I don't.
Or do you still find
I can still
validity in them?
Yes, I do. Especially in the you know, Jerry Lee Lewis and people like that, Eddie Cochran, you've got to remember how young they were at the time. And you say a record like Mean Woman Blues, something like that by Jerry Lee Lewis, 17, 18 years of age. Well, who's doing anything as good as that now at 18 years of age? No one. That's the point. And they were innovators. They were doing something new. They weren't relying on a whole textbook that's been laid down for them. And these people, you know, just something just happened at that particular point of time. You know, this whole thing just the whole thing blossomed within a whole collective number of people, and just
of creativity
came out. You know, but that's the thing that knocks me out when you think that, you know, like the ones that are sadly lost, like Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly, you know, died before they were, what was it, 22 when they died?
Very young.
I mean, the amount of stuff that they laid down. And then when you think of the music that has been laid down in the time between, and you look at the younger ones, you know, say the pre-20s, you know, there's not that much there. That hasn't really been really cribbed right from blues or from rock. And that's the thing that impresses us.
Jimmy, is there a danger, let's say 1976, of trying to be, or in fact not even trying, but being over-creative?
I don't think so, no. You know, it's scratching the surface almost at the moment. I reckon another 5 years it's going to be. There's going to be this is what I'm saying, the younger people are going to be coming through, and then it's really all going to happen. You know, I really think it's going to be an exciting musical heritage to be looking forward to. And it's needed, all this sort of, this great fight that went on in the 50s and the 60s and everything else, to open up the doors almost, to let the flood come through, you know, to break down the barriers.
Right. How much influence do you think that the Beatles exert on today's breakout of rock music generally?
I don't know about today. Certainly at the time, you know, the social question poised by the Beatles, you know, the long hair and this, that and the other, as it was called long hair then.
But of course, in long hair, we've only recycled again, haven't we, in fashion?
Well, exactly, yeah.
Sure.
It only got cut off because of the wars and lice and things like that.
That's right, yeah.
But I think at the time, you know, it certainly a lot of change went down, a lot of social barriers again were broken down, class barriers, even though it may have been resented afterwards, but nevertheless they helped to do that. And over the years that they were very musically prominent and productive, and I think there's a classic example of a group who shows so much development and maturity within their music, within the years that they were together. I mean, let's face it, the early records aren't, you know, they're nothing to really write home about, but by the time they were at Magical Mystery Tour, I mean, it was really going some, you know, really.
Would you, as an eminent musician of the 60s and the 70s, advocate that in fact there is possibly room in our educational structure where people who are gifted immensely musically have no need to go through all the academic studies that they may never use, stick entirely to music, really from the moment it is discovered that they have ability?
Well, you see, now you're posing a whole question of education, the whole system of education, and let's face it, as it is, it's pretty much a waste of time. As far as my own education went, I didn't really receive any education as far as I'm concerned until I went to an art college. And then somebody sort of started to talk to me as an individual as opposed to like a number in a room. And
what did that do for you?
And there was more, well, the point was, you see, at that time, within art college, there was debates, one would, you know, people could discuss between themselves and with the staff certain aspects of what you were doing, whereas in the classroom at school, you shut up. That's the sort of thing that was just totally hopeless, and it wasn't long before you realised that the people that were supposed to be teaching were fools. However, in these times, now I think I know it's changed quite considerably. You've got some damn good people within the education system. But that's, as I say, as far as my own education, that's how it was. And as far as just concentrating on one particular thing, No, I don't think it's a good thing. I think that one should be versed within subjects, but not necessarily to the degree where it's almost a specialist degree. Like I said, trigonometry, calculus. I've never used any of that since I left school. Nowhere at all.
Do you feel that it was a waste of time learning? And I mean, has it helped you at all musically?
Well, no, not in the way that it was taught. Though I have, in fact, become familiar with Pythagoras' approach to music and scale, which relates to mathematics. But that, I mean, I could have approached that with possibly 2 or 3 years of school tuition in mathematics. The whole thing's just a silly status game to just get as many GCE subjects as you could, and you know, if you were a bright spark, you'd get onto university at the end. But I can, you know, it's difficult. I don't really want to, you know. Obviously, this is the sort of thing that can be debated. You know, somebody could raise or throw a lot of points at me to sort of poo-poo the argument. But I'm just thinking about friends of mine that were at school and the ones that carried on through university, and most of them carried on through a very, very heavy academic system and went through the whole bit. But at the end of it, they ended up doing something entirely different that didn't relate at all in one possible way to any of the education that they'd received.
Right. Jimmy, in relation to our previous talking about the composers of today and in fact the spread towards in the future major works that will be acknowledged by the public at large right around the world, what kind of part do you think Led Zeppelin can take in the future?
Well, I don't know whether it can take any at all.
You don't?
No, but I'm only thinking of the sort of experience that they must have felt, you know, the first time of seeing or experiencing like the Ring trilogy, you know, Wagner, or the Rites of Spring with or the Ballet Russe and all these sort of things all tied up together. You know, this whole environmental experience. I mean, let's face it, we've lost a lot that we're not really aware of. In the old silent picture days, it wasn't a jangly piano, it was an orchestra in the big cinemas, and there were sound effects. Now, if you imagine some of those Cecil B. DeMille epics with orchestras and sound effects, it must have been amazing, but we just think that they had jangly pianos, but that was when it reached the, you know, little suburbs, you know. Hey on why?
Yeah, right.
But say somebody like Hendrix, for instance, who tied up all the loose ends of, say, the different, you know, approaches of rock guitar, at least, and blues, and recording too, facilities, and what could be done, and really laid it down. There's somebody that is very sad to be lost, as far as I can see, because he was really doing some amazing work. Not ahead of his time,
4 albums,
but intellectually way ahead of the others.
Very ahead of his time, yes.
Yeah.
I think that when people view the film, The Song Remains the Same, there will be many things they want to ask themselves, and the one that I'd like to ask you, and I hope you can answer to some degree, is what you think about whilst you're on stage playing incredible, intricate guitar.
Good question.
I don't.
You don't?
No. It sounds really pretentious, but
No,
it's
it
like
doesn't sound pretentious.
It's like a trance state, honestly. You don't think. The more you try and plan something, the more you're likely to make a mess of it. It's just like you almost have to cleanse yourself almost of all thought and everything, and then you start playing, and it starts to gel with everybody else. You know, there is obviously certain amounts of direction that go on, but the more programmed it becomes, before going on especially, the more plastic it would appear. You know, there's so much improvisation that goes on, and so many times where you'll just be playing something and staccato rhythms will just fit, you know, in total synchronization, and you'd have no idea that it was ever going to be doing that. You look at each other and wink, and you know that it'd never come again, but
yes,
there it was. You know, it's one of those things.
It's amazing that watching you visually in a performance, it is amazing that you are also totally obsessed with the performance. And as you say, you seem to be in another world. And then all of a sudden there is the sly wink and the sly smile.
Yeah. But don't you think that most actors themselves, when they're, I've always had the impression that an actor, when he takes on the part within a play, he becomes that person. It's just a total involvement within it. And that's just how it is with the instruments. You're just totally involved in it. It's just a part of you, an extension of you, and yet sometimes maybe you're an extension of it. It's like driving a car, you're part of the machine.
Right.
It depends how you look at it.
Would you find it very hard as a person to be a part in your life perpetually from Robert, Bonzo and John?
I'll be very disappointed because of the amount of the alchemical quality that seems to be with us, and the sheer excitement that's generated within just even a rehearsal, and it would be a great shame. It's a great energy source.
What is the tremendous thing for you personally and collectively as a group appearing in front of American audiences?
Well, the feedback.
Yeah.
Really.
What is the difference, Jimmy, in the feedback, say, from America and Australia and England?
Well, I think the American audiences, and it has to be said, they are far more involved in the musical scene, and by that I don't mean the image, but the creative side of it. What's being said lyrically, and what sort of barriers are being sort of broken down, and boundaries, ones are being smashed by the music. They're really more interested in that, I think, than some other countries.
Yeah.
And they really are totally, involved on an intellectual scale in a way, to what is being said. And that's how they sort of mark, the people that they sort of can relate to by what they're actually saying, in their music and lyrics. And obviously, the prime example of that is Dylan.
Yeah.
He just captured the imagination of an age.
Would you be disappointed if an audience ever reacted voluminously to a whole lot of love, yet not?
Well, no, because you see, the whole thing is we don't do that anymore. That number. And obviously, there comes a time when, obviously, you put out so many LPs that you want to give a taste of this, that and the other, and give as much contrast and light and shade within a performance, especially if you play for a long time. Or it's if you get up and walk out if it's all the same sort of stuff. And at this particular point, well, the last tour, so to speak, we weren't doing that. We just did a few bars of it, and then it went into something else.
Yes,
We didn't even sing one verse.
Jimmy, when you come back to England from an American tour, or a tour in the world somewhere, and you come back to the tranquility of your family life, is there a void in your life at all?
Well, it never stops. I never stop being involved in it. Always writing it or playing or doing something. It's there all the time. There's no escape.
Jimmy, thank you very much
Okay.
indeed.
Wow.
Thanks.
That was excellent. Hats off to the interviewer, man. He asked the questions, he shut up long enough for him to formulate his answers, and when he needed a little bit more input, he would just quickly ask a little bit to kind of keep him talking. That is a great interviewer, and he sat down and he really, really crafted the questions for Jimmy, taking into account where they are, taking into account the time, the significance of the album, how Jimmy would see things. Does he see himself as a movie star, for example, a star of film now? All of these things, he really sat down and paid attention, So, hey man, fantastic. That was excellent. All right. Yeah, timing-wise, it's really interesting because this is in '76, and around the late '70s, especially just before the '80s, I know that's when punk was really taking off. And in the back of my mind, I was waiting for him to ask Jimmy, what does he think about that? You know, that punk is starting to make its way in, but maybe it wasn't on such a grand scale yet where you would just kind of like, whoa, what's going on over there? Take notice, right? And you know, I mean, disco was still all the rage at that time, and they didn't mention that as well. So, you know, I mean, you can't mention everything. But I'm glad that the interviewer focused on Jimmy specifically himself. Yes, the band overall, of course, but even went back into his past a little bit, you know, to the very beginning, his first inspired thought. I mean, this interviewer really did his homework well and really catered his questions very well. That's how you conduct an interview, man. Alan Freeman, Brit radio DJ host. Excellent. Hats off to you, my friend. I don't know if you're still with us or not, but definitely mad props. That's one of the best conducted interviews I've heard, seen, and listened to. Absolutely. All right. So, y'all, let's do this, man. Let us now go to Evelyn's link, Stairway to Heaven Backwards, Myth versus Reality. But the title is going to throw us off a little bit. And just like Evelyn was explaining, it's talking about Jimmy's creative process. And that'll be really interesting. And it's 13 minutes, man. So, without further ado, can you see why I was addressing all of the Led Zeppelin casual surface level fans and trolls? There's no way that they're still with us. No way. All right. So, let's hit this up, man. Jimmy Page, his creative process. Let's get it.
You think that's why people did that thing when they played Stairway to Heaven backwards and said that you were talking about
yeah,
Satan?
You know, I'm going to go straight back to the Beatles here, because there was a time when somebody wrote a thesis about Paul McCartney being dead. If you play back the records, there was something which said Paul is dead. And so then they started to play back all manner of records, and of course we were going to be main candidates for it. And somebody said, oh, it says My Sweet Satan.
Did you hear that?
And I thought, oh gosh, it's hard enough writing the music one way round. I don't know that way.
One of the most enduring urban legends of all time is the explanation of how can an artist achieve so much success in their lifetime and seem to have such a level of talent that rises above the norm. The explanation has often come up for thousands of years with certain artists that they must have had a transaction with the devil to give them so much talent and success. Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin were also put in that category, along with Robert Johnson, Franz Liszt, Niccolo Paganini, and many others over the course of time. Part of the reason I led off with this is just simply to get it behind us, because I'm much more interested in the real story and getting it out to you as artists so that we can all learn from this great band and the great success that they had inside the mind of Jimmy Page, who was the creative architect of Led Zeppelin, taking a look at what was the creative process, what made this band work. So having put that behind us, let's take a look at the real creative process of Led Zeppelin as it was architected by Jimmy Page in today's Creativity is Everywhere. Creativity is constant. Creativity is limitless.
The renaissance of creativity.
Maybe the most surprising is that when you are in that flow, creativity is effortless. Really, it is. Led Zeppelin was a band of 4 incredibly talented musicians working together in a very unique way for the life of the band. John Paul Jones on bass, Jimmy Page on guitar, Robert Plant on vocals, and John Bonham on drums. All kind of legendary in their own fields, and then combined created a true dream team of a band. However, that said, the architect of the band creatively, the producer, the mastermind behind the band was Jimmy Page. So in this video, I'm going to focus specifically on Jimmy Page and the process that he personally went through to create the band, to lead the band, and produce the whole direction that resulted in the success of the band. So let's take a look at this. Jimmy Page, by the time he was a teenager, was incredibly accomplished already as a musician. By the age of 16, he was working as a studio musician with professional musicians, in which he had to not only be aware of all the different styles of music that were out there, he had to be proficient in playing them, improvising parts on the fly, and getting everything right on the first try. The world of being a studio musician is one in which you can't afford to make mistakes. He was a top call musician at the age of 16 and 17. So let's not discount just how talented he really was and how truly proficient. Already at that age, he also had an incredible variety of musical influences. So let's take a quick look at that.
The riffs from the Chicago, the sort of Howling Wolf and this sort of thing.
I feel better if you understand. You won't listen to me.
You get like this hybrid, really, of blues music and folk music.
That's haunting, that original.
Great. I wondered how tomorrow could ever follow today.
And rockabilly.
Oh yeah, ever since the world began. Oh, 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 oh.
It's all in there. Modern classicals there too. And my appreciation of Indian music and Arabic music. This stuff was there before I even did sessions, but now I've got a chance to really just keep expanding all these ideas, you know.
So really, all of the creative development that you saw across the career of Led Zeppelin, all those influences were already in Jimmy's mind before the band ever started, as well as his own guitar playing skills, improvisation skills, and recording techniques, which he paid attention to while he was doing that studio work.
By the time I finished being a studio musician, I learned a lot. I made it my business to learn how to read music, also how to record with the microphone placing, the whole science of microphone placing, and also being a musical arranger and producer.
So the first real takeaway that I get from this is to just go with what you know. That's what Jimmy Page was doing. Those were the influences he happened to have. Those were the skills that he happened to have, and he just went with those. So for creative people like you and me, the important takeaway is to go with what you know. What are your influences? What are your skills? Go with that. Don't try to be something that you're not. There was an incredible amount of creativity that went into the presentation of the band and what you would call the marketing side of it, which also was directly reflective of Jimmy Page's creativity. This was not a normal record company rollout of a new band. This was something that was engineered specifically by Jimmy Page because of his awareness. So that's the next thing I want to cover, is Jimmy Page's awareness, not only of the chemistry of the band, but also the opportunity that was set before him.
Robert Plant was just a local singer in Birmingham. John Bonham was a drummer who just about started to move out of Birmingham. John Paul Jones I'd known as a studio musician. We had a sort of rehearsal, and the rehearsal was just, it changed everybody's life from just the first song that we played, because the intensity of these four master musicians coming together was something that none of us have ever experienced before.
Before these four people got in the room and played together for the first time, Jimmy already had in mind the textures and the kind of sounds and the influences that he wanted to put together in a band. When he found these four And they played, and it was obvious that this was going to be the group that could be that vehicle to bring that vision to life. But beyond that, there was another level of awareness that Jimmy had that's extremely important at this point. Because of his previous experience playing with the Yardbirds and touring the United States a little bit already, he was a little bit aware of what was going on in the world of music. He saw an unmet need that this band could fill, which ended up being crucially important to the success of the band.
There was a form of radio that had nothing whatsoever to do with pop music, really. It was an underground music. When the Yardbirds folded, I could see that was the route, and I knew that we'd already played these underground venues, and that the underground radio was waiting. It just needed the product to go on there. The pop music ones, the AM, would just play single records. They were going to play on FM whole sides of albums, so that's 20 minutes at a shot.
Smart, yeah.
So I figured that if you were to have quite a variety of music, one track basically following up the next, and you had quite a diversity within that music, that you would get people really listening in and buying into the whole idea of what you were doing.
So now the stage has been set with Jimmy's musical vision, his influences, his skills, and now having assembled the band members and also seeing a unique opportunity for a new audience to hear new music, the music now has to actually get written. And that brings us to the recording of the first album, Led Zeppelin 1.
I mean, initially from Led Zeppelin 1, I knew exactly the whole of the textures that I wanted to present to people so that it would go, wow, that's really interesting. I haven't heard so many things approached in one go, you know. It's not like you pull the things out of a hat. You know, write the titles down, pull them out of a hat. You actually know exactly what you've got, the full expanse of the album material. Sometimes things get left off, and then you sort of piece them together in such a way that on vinyl in those days it would be 20 minutes, they'd play the whole side, and that would even lead into turning it over and playing the next side. So it was very
smart, very
calculated in a way, but it was with artistic integrity.
That last little statement was so important. He said that it was calculated, but with artistic integrity. That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? That creativity has a spontaneous side to it, but there was also a strategic side to it as well, that Jimmy used both in the formation of the songs of the band. So when he was envisioning Led Zeppelin 1, he was envisioning something that had a dramatic flow to it that would last 20 minutes long. You turn over the record and you have another 20 minutes. So that was a strategic outline, while using elements of improvisation and coming up with acoustic guitar riffs at home, having the band all contribute their parts in a spontaneous way to fill out the songs, but it was to fulfill a strategic role, not only in terms of the album itself, but in terms of the marketing to the public. So that's really the final thing I want to bring out about Jimmy Page's creativity, was that he exercised both strategic creativity and spontaneous creativity.
Right on.
Every night we were pushing it. We paid a lot of attention to each other. We could hear each other. So consequently, if somebody's taking, I know it's sort of very guitar-led, but if Robert was to sort of sing anything at any point, we'd be right on it like that. And so it was such fun. It was incredible fun. And when you walked up the steps to go on stage, you didn't know what would be happening all the way through that concert, and what would evolve and what would come out of nowhere by the time you walked off.
Wow. And then finally, the band made the decision to wrap it up when the drummer John Bonham died. There was a lot of resistance to that from the public. Why couldn't they go on? Why couldn't they find another drummer? But there was a really specific reason for that, and it had to do with the creative process of the band. Check this out.
So, but when John died, it had to be over.
It was a four-piece band that when it toured, each concert had different elements to it from the night before, indeed the night that was going to be in front of it. And so it was constantly changing. We had this, we had this whole, we'd built up this whole sort of elevation really to how we played. and synchronicity and connection, that to actually, once you lost one of those 4 members, and at the time like we did, there was no way you could bring somebody in and rehearse pieces that were from bootlegs or sound tapes or whatever, to say, well, we did it like this, like you were saying, in 1975. Can you do a bit of that along with what we did here in 1977? You know, the whole thing would have been so disconnected that it would have been impossible to actually be able to play and not see John Bonham there.
So that concludes our look at Jimmy Page's creative process, the mastermind behind Led Zeppelin. It had to do with his influences, his skills, his awareness of band chemistry, his awareness of what was going on in the world of music, his creative process, which was both spontaneous and strategic. I really hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed putting this together. If you like this material, click subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope to see you next time.
Right on. I'll definitely give you a like and a subscribe, brother man. That was awesome. Wow. Yeah, the title definitely is one to throw you off, because you know, basically it's all about his creativity, it's all about his vision, it's all about his motivations, his background, and brother was following his bliss. He was motivated by faith. And yeah, you know what? Going back to that Curse of Led Zeppelin thing, and you know, there were so many different charges and accusations and things of this sort of thing, kind of trying to lead people into thinking certain things about Jimmy Page and his creative process. The bottom line is that the guy had an awareness of, and he knew how good he was. He also knew what he needed in order to achieve his vision, because he had the vision already. He knew that he couldn't take the Yardbirds with him. They were not the platform, they were not the vehicle. What he wanted to achieve, the need that he wanted to fill, that opportunity that he saw unfolding through FM, through all of these different things, he knew what he needed. And he was putting it out there. What's the law of attraction, the law of compensation and returns? He was putting it all out there. He was asking, he was seeking. And what he was seeking was, he was seeking a platform, a vehicle, as this guy used the words, to get him to what he wanted to achieve with his vision. Very, very smart man. Good awareness of the times he was in, good awareness of himself and his skills, and what he required in other people to help him to achieve and accomplish his goal. Following his bliss, baby. Fantastic, man. That's why the story of and the history of Led Zeppelin is so damn intriguing to me. Literally, you know, now you don't have to be a person of faith at all, right? But if you've got some common sense in your damn brain, you will know that, yeah, man, these guys were definitely following a path. They definitely have some crazy, crazy skills. I call it skills on loan from God, you know, and they definitely had an orientation. And this lad, Jimmy Page, he was the foundation of all of that, you know, and he was leading the charge. Fantastic, man. It's one of my favorite stories in rock and roll, the formation of Led Zeppelin, and the formation of Led Zeppelin being the vision and what goes on in the mind and the soul of Jimmy Page. That shit is intriguing as hell to me, man. That's why they're one of my favorite acts in rock and roll. That's why they're one of my favorite subjects of rock and roll. It's incredible, you know. I've got some people who say to me, oh, you don't do enough Led Zeppelin reaction. And then some people say to me, oh man, you do way too many Led Zeppelin reactions, you gotta cut it back. Or maybe, you know, now you should kind of hang it up and you should do this, you should do this. I don't have to do shit. All I need to do is focus on what's in front of me. And as long as you guys keep sending me recommendations for it, I've got an open mind and I've got the time. Well, I shouldn't say that. It took me a long time to get to this. I mean, Susan sent me this 2 months ago. No, longer than that, 3 months ago. And then Evelyn. And so I've been sitting on this for a while trying to make the time. And normally if I'm doing a reaction, I'm doing one for the classic platform and one for the Beyond platform. But this particular reaction, I knew it's going to take up both of that time. So this is going to be definitely a 2-hour reaction. But you know what? You got to make the time. Sometimes it's that important. And speaking of importance, Evelyn again. I made a promise to Evelyn, man. At the top of the year, I said, Evelyn, I promise that come December, I am going to definitely react to the O2. I will not break that promise for nothing. And what it took from me was taking a day off of work early before my Christmas holidays to make sure that I was on point with that shit. You know, there are some things that are just that important. When some of our great, fantastic heroes of rock pass away, you've got to understand that shit is important. You've got to give a little bit of respect and appreciation, because these people were part of your growing up, part of the social climate that you know and love. You know, these are important things. And so when I have the opportunity to check out the formation of Led Zeppelin, especially up close and personal like this, yo, I'm all for that shit, man. I am on it. Now, it might take my ass a while to get to it, but yes, I am on it, and I'm not going to stop until I finally get to it. But this is how much I really love documentaries, and especially learning about the creative process of rock and roll. You know, hearing about Jimmy talking about the foundations being laid by the Jerry Lee Lewises and all of those people, even way before that, going into the blues, man. This is some shit that I could sit and listen to all day long, I tell you. All right. I'm talking too much, man. This reaction is going to be way too long, but that's okay. The casual fans and the trolls, they have long since lost interest. They're elsewhere trying to get entertainment. So for us, let's get edification. And let's check out what Brian sent us. This is Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. How Many More Times, live at the Bazaar Festival in Cologne. All right. A 9-minute How Many More Times. Let's get it.
Hey, let's hear it for the brightest rhythm section in the world today. Would you give a big warm welcome on drums to Mr. Michael Lee? On bass guitar, Mr. Charlie Jones.
Did Michael not pass away?
I'm here on this wet, miserable field. We introduce you to a little psychedelic jazz.
A little psychedelic jazz.
I'll give you all I've got to give, baby.
lad that's playing bass, is he not part of the Dave Matthews Band?
That's right, that's right. Yeah.
His hair is short hair, so I'm not sure.
That's right, that's right, that's right, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, so I'm trying to find another man too, yeah.
So this is a 98. Bass groove there. It's a John Paul Jones special. How could I forget about the bow? I was waiting for Plant to come in with the Oh Rosie part. Hey, it's all good. So obviously, that song ended up actually being longer than 9 minutes. It was probably, if, he comes in with the Oh Rosie part and they get into it more and do the outro, it'll probably end up being more like a 12-minute song, I'm sure. But hey, it's all good, Brian. Thank you very much, man. Of course, now I want to see the rest of it. If it exists out there, somebody knows about it, let me know, man. Hey, fantastic, man. Fantastic. A really, really good look at Jimmy Page and the master that he is. And it just goes to show, man, even if you didn't have a playbook, you didn't have a track to run on or a good orderly direction back in the day, the dude was following his bliss, and look at where it's led him to. You know what I'm saying? He's got the world at his feet, and well deserved, because he took that walk of faith and he knew what direction he was going in, even though it was at the time the road less traveled, not too many trailblazers at the time. Jimi Hendrix had just passed in 1970. So yeah, man, not too many people traveling down that road. And he was formulating something new. He was focused on the FM underground radio station coming up. He was focusing on the formation of the full album experience. He had all of these fantastic things in play in his mind. Man, I'm telling you, the Led Zeppelin history is one of the most impressive where it comes to the formation of a band, where it comes to the coming together of these four unique individuals forming a band and forming a unit. It's just fantastic stuff. It's one of those things of wonders. If you had a wonder of, you've got your 8 wonders of the world. If you had your wonders of rock and roll, this would be one of those wonders of rock and roll. You know what I'm talking about? The formation of Led Zeppelin. Fantastic stuff, man. All right. The spirit of his delivery. That is why this guy is my favorite guitarist. And yeah, there's a million guitarists. There's a number of them that can play better, play faster, do all kinds of other amazing things. But it's all that the stuff that was listed about his creative process, who he is, and the charm of what he is. Like I said, in the interview, you've got this very, very quiet, soft-spoken person, this gentle soul. But this guy is at the helm of some crazy-ass thunder. Doesn't it blow your mind to think? Anyway, I can talk about Led Zeppelin all day because it's so intriguing. But I'm not going to talk about him all day. I got to bounce. I got to go to work, man. Try and wrap my head around work. Can you believe that shit? Crazy. All right. So, y'all, thanks very much for joining me. Let me see what I got coming up here before I do bounce, man. Don, Jeffrey, Finesse, Jack, Jeff. Now, wait a minute now. No, Finesse doesn't have a Led Zeppelin for me. He's got early Chicago. Somebody in this lineup has another Led Zeppelin. I'm not quite sure. So there'll be a little bit more Led Zeppelin down the road, man. So that's what I got coming up on the platform for reactions and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoyed this, man. And again, we're, an hour and a half to 2 hours in. By now, it's only the real Led Zeppelin fans that are still with me. Hit me up. Let me know who you are. Hashtag, I am the real shit. Let me know who you are. Give it to me, man. This channel is not for the casual Led Zeppelin fan. Only the true Led Zeppelin fans remain. If you're with me this damn long, you are a true Led Zeppelin fan. Hashtag, I'm the real shit. All right, y'all. You guys have yourselves a good one. Take care. Next time you see me, you'll see me tomorrow, and it'll be hitting up Don's quad. I got a couple of Dons. This is Don D. You'll see me doing Don D's. I'm not sure if it's a quad or what it is, but Don D's reaction is up tomorrow. I'll see you then. Peace out.